Thank you all for joining today on a Saturday morning, spending time with us. And we are happy to bring Ian's webinar. She's going to talk about crowdfunding and growing your business. So before that, I just want to take a few minutes and then talk about our CocoaTown. What's CocoaTown? Because there are a lot of people new here. So I just want to, I'm not going to take a lot of time from you. So I just want to say our passion is to creating and empowering chocopreneurs around the world. We have been, pioneering craft chocolate technology through sustainable solutions. And our vision is to expand the line of technologically advanced equipment and education through Cocoversity for empowering chocopreneurs and showcasing cocoa farmers and micro businesses through our Chocopreneur Showcase. And also, we help our customers get the international exposure by helping them to exhibit in international chocolate festivals. If you look at our history, Concept started in 1992, basically as a trading company. But, the recession in 2008 wanted us to pivot, and that's when we pivoted to start making chocolate machinery because nobody else was making the machinery in small scale at that time. So in 2006, we started selling machinery for chocolate, but in 2009, after the recession, we paid more attention to that industry and created CocoaTown, and then our pioneering, and we are always focusing on sustainability in three areas: cocoa farming, customers business, and environment. So all our machines that people bought in 2006, they're still working, and some of the machines we see that third person or fourth person is buying, because when people outgrow it to ball mills or other things, then they sell it and other people keep buying it, so you get the maximum value for your money. And this is a detailed timeline. We just don't make machines, like we said. We are, technology, advanced machines, and we have the patents for our machines. So some of them the patent is given, and some of them we are in the process of, they are in the process of reviewing it. And then our three pillars are equipment, education, and exposure. And we have the equitable pricing, because if you look at the chocolate industry, the machines, most of the machines, you cannot find the price. You have to call them and find out. But we are different. We always want to be transparent and consistent, and we also provide financial assistance for our customers. We give them the options to do it. And then, these are the machines. We got the complete solution now, starting from roasting all the way to the tempering machine. And we are helping the farmers to grow their income, because instead of selling the cocoa beans as the commodity prices, now they can make the nibs or couverture or the chocolate and then climb their economic ladder. And then we have the machines for any size. We have from 500 grams all the way to 90 kilos per batch in the melanges. So the same way the Vinovas, anywhere from 10 kilos to 100 kilos. So depending on your budget, depending on your location, we can customize these machines. So we are always innovative, and we have the continuous improvement of our machines. Also, the one thing with our machines is when we make the continuous improvement, you don't have to keep buying the new machines. You just need to buy those accessories. We are not like iPhone. When iPhone 10 comes and then iPhone 9 is not workable, you have to throw that out and then buy a new one. In ours, the machines are backward compatible. So even if you bought the machines in 7, 8 years ago, whatever the new changes we make, still you can do it without any additional, instead of changing the whole machine, you just change the parts. And our wish is always Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So may all the beings everywhere in the world be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life in contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. So we wish you good luck with your business. And then these are the contact information for us. You can reach us by phone call, WhatsApp, email, Facebook, Skype, and our website. Thank you. And now I will hand over to Teresa.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Balu. One of the things that I love that you didn't mention is that the R&D is also done based on customer feedback. So all of our customers are part of the process of making the machines great. I like that. Okay, so in case you didn't know, my name is Teresa Grant, and I'm a part of your Empowering Chocopreneurs team. And I've been charged with a little bit of housekeeping. So, what I would like to do is let you know that today's presentation is being recorded, and you will receive a link to view the recording at a later date. You will also receive a link to Ian's PowerPoint presentation so that you'll get all the great slides and be able to go through that at your leisure. What I would also like to invite you to do is put your questions as they come up in the chat, and if it lends to it, we may interrupt Ian during her presentation and ask the question. Otherwise, we have saved time at the end today for a Q&A, and we will get our questions answered then. Okay, and then with that, I would like to quickly turn to Ian and welcome her to our Empowering Chocopreneurs webinars. We're glad to have you with us today. And just so we can get to know you a little bit, I wanted to ask you, can you share with the audience a little bit about where your chocolate journey started?
Oh, yes, I can do that. Hi, Teresa. Hi, everyone. My name's Ian. Where did my chocolate journey start? So I'd say it started in 2019. I was living in Accra, Ghana, and I just kind of learned about the chocolate industry. I mean, so much of cocoa is produced in West Africa. So I learned a lot about that, and I found out that not that much chocolate is actually made there. So that's kind of why I became passionate about chocolate and wanted to be part of the industry. And that's kind of what took me on this journey that I'm on now.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us quickly that before I turn it over to you, tell us the name of your chocolate company?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's Luji's chocolate, Luji' chocolate.
All right, wonderful. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you. We look forward to learning from your experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Teresa. I'm going to share my screen, and I love confirmation if you all see it. So I'm going to share it now. So I think I already did brief introductions. I'm Ian. I'm the founder of Luji's Chocolate, and I'm going to be talking to you all about crowdfunding today and hopefully unwrapping some of the secrets about it and how to raise capital via crowdfunding for those of you who are curious about it or want to learn about it. Before I jump in, I'd actually like to just take a quick poll in the room, just via the chat. You can respond in the chat if you have a perspective here, but has anyone done a Kickstarter or been involved in a crowdfunding campaign before in the past? Okay, I see one no so far.
You could also use the raise hand feature if you have done crowdfunding in the past. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a raise hand.
Yeah, but with the silence, I would assume most people that's a no. So I'll take that as most people have not done crowdfunding before. I'm also curious for those who haven't done it, if that's the case. Have you ever been curious about it or wanted to, or maybe consider doing it for your product or brand? Okay, Andre, I saw you saying no. Yes, okay. So I see, it seemed like I assumed most of you have not done crowdfunding, but I do see some yeses that you have, either considered it or you're interested in learning more about it. So hopefully during this session, I can shed some light for those of you who have considered it or maybe are considering it right now. So I'm excited to jump into the presentation. I think Teresa stole my thunder a little bit, but I already told you guys about my chocolate story. But just to give you a little bit more of a background on me, I'm the founder of Luji's Chocolate. Luji's Chocolate is a made in West Africa chocolate brand that aims to support cocoa farmers as we also produce delicious chocolate for our customers. Right now, I'm in Brooklyn, New York. So I live in New York most of the time. But back in 2019, I was actually living in Accra, Ghana. And that's where I got started on my chocolate journey. I found out that over 70% of cocoa is produced in West Africa, but most of the region doesn't produce that much chocolate. So I got inspired and motivated to start a chocolate company of my own. Once I made that decision, I wanted to jump right in, get started right away. And I started looking into the entire process, you know, from packaging to getting a designer to making a logo, the website, buying raw materials like the cocoa beans, machinery, marketing. The list goes on, but there are so many things. And I realized that I needed a way to fund Luji's chocolate and make my dreams a reality. I also wanted a way to like spread the news about my brand, and when I launch, make it more of an event. So I went to Google and I started researching just different ways to get funding, from traditional banks to venture capital. But I found that since I was so early on, I really wasn't eligible for those traditional means of getting funding. But I still wanted to get started. So I spoke with my network, and I can't remember who exactly it was, but someone shared with me about the idea of crowdfunding and launching on Kickstarter. So after doing research on the Kickstarter platform, I did just that. I launched on Kickstarter. So I think you can see that a little bit here. I launched Luji's Chocolate last October 2022, and I raised a little over $20,000 from 300 customers or backers who kind of backed my campaign on Kickstarter. So I was able to successfully fund Luji's Chocolate. And that's why I'm talking to you all today, just to talk to you about crowdfunding and just share my knowledge with other choco entrepreneurs who could be interested in potentially leveraging this and also using it to fund their business. So just as far as what I'll talk about today, for this webinar, it's going to be in mainly 3 stages, or 3 stages. The first one, I'm going to give general background on crowdfunding. So we can I'll talk through the power of crowdfunding, what exactly is crowdfunding, because potentially some of you may not know what it is. And then I'll get a little bit more tactical into how you actually raise, how you actually like plan and launch a crowdfunding campaign. And then lastly, I'll share some more personal anecdotes from my experience launching Luji's Chocolate on Kickstarter, and then I'll leave room for Q&A at the very end. But as Teresa mentioned, you can feel free to leave any questions in the chat, and if it makes sense, we'll just step in to answer those. So I'll jump in to talking about the power of crowdfunding. So what is crowdfunding? Crowdfunding is the practice of funding a project or venture by raising money from a large number of people, typically via the internet. So that's the definition that if you Google it, that's what you'll find out. But essentially it means, let's say I have a chocolate business and I want to launch this business and I need $10,000, let's say to actually do that project, but I don't have $10,000. Instead of finding a single individual who's willing to give you that entire amount of money, that lump sum, I can instead get smaller contributions from many people, you know, leveraging my network, as well as doing marketing to get additional people who will give me much smaller amounts, maybe like $50, $100 here, $200 here, that will end up hopefully amounting to the same $10,000. And then in exchange, the donors also get a reward, which you as the crowdfunder get to decide. So in exchange for the reward that you put on the platform, they put in some funding into your business. And that's essentially how crowdfunding works. So how does this apply to us? I think I already gave a relatively good example, but it just means if you're trying to launch your chocolate business, or if you're going into the next stage of your business, maybe purchasing equipment or doing anything else like that, you can set up a crowdfunding campaign, set up reward tiers that people can pick from, and then they're able to kind of donate and back your campaign on the crowdfunding platform. And the people who support your crowdfunding campaign are usually called backers. So I'll refer to them as backers during the rest of the webinar. So why crowdfunding, and why is crowdfunding like especially relevant? I'm actually going to move my screen over, make sure I can see it. So crowdfunding, there's many reasons why it's really good and why it's something that, you know, you may want to consider if you haven't before. But with crowdfunding, you get to have access to funding without traditional financing. So like I mentioned, that's one of the main reasons why I went that approach, because you don't have to go the route of venture capital or traditional banks or any other means, but you can do something that's a little bit unique and not the typical financial channels. And then crowdfunding, as far as the second point, it also allows you to actually build a community of supporters who want to back your project. It's interesting because if you're not like on these platforms often, you may not know that there are people who are on, crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. They're eager backers who are actually looking for new brands, new projects, new opportunities to kind of support. It's a marketplace of early adopters. These are people who are the first ones to get in on a new project. That's kind of the archetype of the people who are on crowdfunding platforms. So it can be really powerful for you to access them and build a community of that level of support for your brand early on. And then in line with that, it also allows you to garner pre-sales and opportunity for you to market your product and make it more of an event when you launch on a crowdfunding platform versus just launching on your website. So it can be really beneficial to you, for you. And then instead of having to spend all your time, energy, and resources into developing a whole new products line or a new brand, you can actually validate that people are interested in it. Because if they're able to back your campaign on a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter, that already validates that it's an idea worth pursuing long-term versus spending a lot of time and people may not actually truly be interested in it. So there's a lot of benefits to crowdfunding, and I wanted to kind of anchor our conversation in that before actually diving into like, how do you run a campaign and how does that look? And for those of you who don't know the crowdfunding platforms that exist, there's a variety of different ones. Luji's Chocolate, we launched on Kickstarter. Kickstarter and Indiegogo are probably the two most popular crowdfunding websites. So I just highlighted them in yellow so that you can see those. But other than those two, there are actually a bunch of different platforms that you can access and leverage. There, for example, there's iFund Women. iFund Women is a crowdfunding platform for women entrepreneurs. So it's really great because that means you have supporters who are looking for women entrepreneurs to support. And that's why they're on the platform. There's also WeFunder. This is an equity-based crowdfunding platform. And what that means is you put a reward on the website and backers will be able to donate to your project, except instead of a reward, they'll actually be getting equity into your business. So WeFunder is a little bit different, but there's also equity-based crowdfunding. And then the other one I wanted to call out is just GoFundMe. GoFundMe is actually pretty popular. I think most people have heard of it. And this is more geared towards individuals, charitable causes, and community projects, and not necessarily brands or businesses. So if you have a venture that is maybe more of a nonprofit, maybe it's a farming initiative that people may want to just tap into and support, GoFundMe is actually a great option. And the reason I also wanted to call out all of these is that, I'm going to reference Kickstarter a lot just because that's the way Luji's Chocolate launched successfully. However, all the tactics are actually the same, more or less, for all these platforms, at least based on my research online. So no matter the platform, we're essentially going to offer rewards in exchange for money. And it's the same thing. It's just different platforms that cater to different audiences. So for your unique product, you kind of have to research and see which one could be the best for you. And then just to talk about, I may say, I wanted to share some crowdfunding businesses that you may have heard of already, but you may not have known that they actually got started from a crowdfunding platform, and that's how they got big. So I'll just go through these quickly. One of them is Oculus VR. I don't know if anyone's heard of Oculus, but they're the VR headset. They got started on Kickstarter actually in 2012. And I believe Facebook acquired Oculus for billions of dollars. So, I mean, that's like a crazy outcome from starting on a crowdfunding platform and getting the support and the funding to be able to start off that venture. There's also Allbirds, which is those funky, comfortable shoes. They also started on Kickstarter, and I mean, now it's a publicly traded company. There's Peloton, the at-home workout system. I mean, those are everywhere. And then there's also Brooklinen, the premium bedsheet brand. And I see those ads everywhere for people to support. But I'm actually going to go on mute for 1 second because my background is really loud. Okay. I'm not sure if, because I live in New York, which I mentioned before, my background gets really loud and there's so many sirens. And because I have AirPods on, people end up telling me they heard none of the sound. So I'm not sure if you guys could hear that, but it was really loud. So I wanted to go on mute. But just to close out this slide is just to share that there's so many businesses that have started on crowdfunding, and it's really a great tool and mechanism to launch your business, kind of for the very reasons that I talked about earlier. And then now I'm going to dive in a little bit more into some of the more tactical ways about how you actually, plan your crowdfunding campaign, and how do you actually put together a crowdfunding campaign? What are the components? So there are essentially 4 key components of a crowdfunding campaign page. And I may actually be able to show my screen and just go to one of the pages, but just to level set on what are the things on the page, you have your launch video. This is where you share your story. This is where you actually tell the brand vision and what you're trying to do with the project. This is where you let your personality shine. If your brand is more centered around like maybe being funny, or if you're telling a story about direct trade, or if there's something about health benefits, the videos where you're really going to articulate that so that your backers or potential backers know exactly what they're getting from your project. It's also your #1 marketing tool, because it's, video is such a powerful medium and it gets people really engaged. So it's kind of the most important tool and thing for you to focus on as far as the campaign page. Other than the video, you also have your reward tiers. So reward tiers are what people get when they back your campaign. So this is also a marketing exercise. It should be clear to people what they're getting, but you also want to kind of showcase the benefits of your brand and that they're getting a lot of things in your reward tiers. And just to explain, like, your reward tiers can be anything, because on crowdfunding campaigns, people launch things like video games, they launch a play or an album or anything really, and you're able to give a reward based on what you think your customers would like. So when I was launching Luji's chocolate, most of my rewards were centered around giving away my chocolate, simply because that's what I was launching. So it made sense that my reward was centered around that. But I also gave away t-shirts just for people who maybe didn't want chocolate, but they wanted to back the brand. I also gave away well, those were the 2 main things actually, but you're able to add anything. It can be maybe a video that you're giving away of maybe the farm story. It can be additional merch that's not a t-shirt. There can just be so many things. You just more so have to really understand your target audience and what they would like, and then add that as a reward, since that would appeal to them. And then the next part of your campaign page is the campaign body. So this is the bulk of your campaign page. It's the main asset that lives on the page, where you get to have a written description of your campaign and kind of share your project story again and the reason for the campaign. One thing to keep in mind for campaigns or for the campaign body, is that you want to really lean into having a lot of images and videos within the campaign body as well, simply because that's the easiest way for them to understand, not too many words. You want to keep them engaged and add videos and pictures throughout the campaign body so that they can be really engaged in it.
Ian, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a question. Andre is asking, where where most of your backers already familiar with your product or samples? Because since you talked about, when you give away the reward tiers, some people didn't want the t-shirts, so you came up with something. So that means, did you know the community before? So his question is relevant for both the points. That's why I had to interrupt. You can go ahead.
Oh yeah, no problem. That's a great question, Andre. So most of the backers were not familiar with the product because the Luji's chocolate was brand new at that point when we launched, so no one knew about it, and that was kind of our launch event, was via crowdfunding. Um, what we did though, which is why I'm kind of highlighting some of these things, is that you want to tell them the story of the brand. So even though they haven't tasted it, they're learning about it during the process of the crowdfunding campaign. So from your video to the rewards being super detailed, to the campaign body explaining what the packaging is going to look like, what the ingredients are going to be, you really want the backers to know exactly what they're going to get so they feel comfortable to back and support you. So they weren't familiar with it before the campaign, but I think by watching or by tapping into the campaign content itself, they were able to learn about the brand and the chocolate and what to expect. So that was a really good question. And then the final asset that lives on your campaign page that you want to think about during the pre-launch phase is your funding goal. So the funding goal is just how much do you want to raise? This is really important actually, because there are a lot of platforms that are all or nothing. So for instance, Kickstarter is an all or nothing platform. And so what that means is you only get the capital if you meet your funding goal. So if you make your funding goal $50,000, but you raise $49,000, you're not going to get that amount unless you raise the $50,000. So you really want to be strategic about what you select as a funding goal, because like I said, some platforms are all or nothing, but it also showcases a lot about the brand trajectory potentially, depending on what you actually select as a funding goal. So it's definitely a strategic point to think about. And then I'm going to talk through the pre-launch strategy. And again, if there are any questions about what Luji's chocolate specifically did, feel free to leave it in the chat, but I'm gonna just talk through just general pre-launch and for crowdfunding and what that looks like. When you think about a campaign, right, you have your pre-launch, you have the launch phase, and then you have the post-launch. And even if it's not crowdfunding, usually the pre-launch is the most important phase. And that's especially true in crowdfunding, because when you're thinking about when you're thinking about the pre-launch strategy, there are kind of three main buckets that you want to focus on. And I have these three outlined here. So first is your marketing, then it's your product, and then lastly, it's your assets. So I'm going to talk through each of these three and hopefully shed some light into what each of these can look like and what you should think about strategically during your pre-launch phase. Because like I mentioned, this is the most important phase. I think for most people, the pre-launch stage ends up being 3 to 6 months, depending on, your campaign. And this is kind of where you put in the most work, and then hopefully it's just coasting during the actual launch phase. But the pre-launch is where you get kind of your ducks in order so that that can happen. So to talk a little bit on the marketing side, the marketing piece, this is where you build your community. So if you want to launch anything on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever the platform is, you have to have a group of people who are awaiting the launch. Similar to what, and maybe this is towards the question you asked, Andre, actually. You have to create a list of people who are essentially waiting for your launch so that once you do release, you have a list of people to reach out to. So one of the key things to focus on during the pre-launch phase is building an email list. So if you don't have an email list already, let's say you didn't have a business, this is the first one, which is the scenario I was in, you want to start building that audience that's eager and waiting for your launch. So the best way to do this is to, create a landing page. So this is just a website that is telling people about your project, and the sole purpose of that site is to collect emails from prospects or potential backers, right? So what you're going to do is you create the landing page, and then you're going to drive people to that landing page so that they leave their email with the understanding that they are excited to find out about your launch. Because you've described your brand or story, you've described the project that's upcoming, and they're leaving their email to be notified of the launch. And there's many ways you can drive traffic to your landing page, right? You can do that by networking at in-person events, or networking at virtual events, engaging in Facebook groups you're a part of, or other online communities, whether it's like maybe WhatsApp, connecting with influencers and sending them your product so that they can share it with their audience, hosting giveaways. And then lastly, another big thing people do is also using ads. So there's a bunch of ways you can drive traffic to the landing page, but the core goal is to essentially get a robust list of emails who are eager and waiting for your campaign to launch, essentially. Key thing to know, which I had you on the slides, is that quality is always going to be better than quantity, because if you have a bunch of people, but they don't care about your product, maybe they don't care about chocolate, or they don't care about, what you're launching, then it's not going to do much for your Kickstarter when you actually launch. So you really want to focus on high quality emails and people who are interested in that, which is some of the tactics that, I mentioned, where you're driving them based on organic or ads traffic that's centered around your key messages. And another thing, people generally say that about 5% or so of people on a high quality email list end up being backers and confirm and convert to be backers. So you can also do some math and reverse engineer and figure out how many people do you need on your email list to raise the amount of funds that you're actually looking to raise during your campaign. And then the second thing to really focus on, which is like, I don't think there's any surprise here, but it's your product. It's like, this is what you're actually giving people in exchange for their donations. So you have to define what it is from the very beginning. We're on a CocoaTown webinar here, so I'm assuming most people, if you were to go into a crowdfunding campaign, would be selling something related to chocolate. But you really want to define, like, why is your product and your project essentially unique, whether it's about, working with farmers, or maybe it's about the health benefits, or it's about, there's so many different reasons that it could be. Maybe it's like family owned or made directly, like made with your family. There's just different things, but you really want to hone in on your messaging and craft that story as you're doing the marketing. So learning from the audience that you're building of what that key message is and positioning is for your project, so that once the actual launch starts, you already know how to kind of draft your campaign page and all the assets that you need to develop there. And that actually leads me to the very last section to focus on, which are your assets. So the most important asset, I think I already talked about this a little bit, honestly, is your launch video. That's where you need to focus most of your effort on. If you're talking about the assets that you're creating, you really want to demonstrate proof behind your brand's, the benefits, the differences, the story, whatever that positioning that you're anchoring on, you really want to drive that home in the video so that people know why they're supporting you, and they're also eager to support you as part of the campaign. And one thing I wanted to highlight here is that, I don't think the video needs to be expensive. You don't need to you don't need to work with some like super high tech videographer and invest a lot of money. I actually worked with friends to create my video, but it does have to have really good lighting and really good sound. And the most important thing is a compelling message that people can buy into and want to support, and then of course, throughout your pre-launch, you also want to be gathering product pictures, reviews if you can, so that people, again, really start to feel what your brand is about just by landing on your campaign page, and they're excited to be part of it, because you want to build that community around this event, which is the crowdfunding event, so that they are into it. And then I want to see if there's anything else I left off here. I don't think so. I think we've covered almost everything. If we've covered everything here. So now I'm going to drill in a little bit deeper. This slide is pretty dense, but it's just a pre-launch checklist that you would want to go through during the pre-launch phase, because there are a lot of things when you're launching a crowdfunding platform. So I just wanted to create this slide to talk through kind of what's my checklist. And most of these I've already discussed, but I just wanted to share this detailed checklist. These are things you want to think through before the launch. And once you have these things ready, the launch phase is a lot easier and it's a lot simpler because you already have these things put together. So I'll talk through these in high level, and then I can get more detailed if there are any questions. So as far as on the left side is where I'm talking through the high priority items, and the right side is more medium priority, but in truth, all of these need to be done at some point. So just wanted to separate these so you can think through it. But the top one, of course, is creating a prototype, right? The best thing to make people feel confident in your project is to have a ready prototype, so that they know what they're getting and you're holding it in your hand and they're convinced that it's real. Because you can sell and say, this is upcoming, but it feels more believable that you will actually follow through with the campaign once it's done if you have a prototype in hand. So that's probably a key thing to focus on, is really getting that product ready. And then we already talked through the necessity of running a pre-launch campaign, creating that landing page, and driving traffic to it. So you want to focus a lot of time on there to make sure you have enough people in your email list so that once you launch, there are people who are waiting and ready for your campaign. And then in line with, the pre-launch campaign, another key thing, of course, is social media marketing. You want to start posting regularly and bringing people on along the journey with you. So for Luji's chocolate, I started posting on Instagram well in advance, not to a large following, but just to people who were actually genuinely interested in the story of the brand. So started sharing, behind the scenes, a little bit when I got my initial set of packaging, also telling people about the story behind the brand, and just sharing some small and slight teasers, but with the intent of driving them to my landing page so I can get their emails and continue to build my email list of people who are waiting for my campaign. And then after that, another part of it is setting up compelling reward tiers, right? So now that you've built your email list and you know more about your product, well, what exactly are you going to be giving away to those people? You really want to, already before the launch, you want to already have this all done. So by day one of the launch, you're not worried about coming up with your reward tiers and exactly what you're giving away. And just as a reminder, a reward tier is the actual rewards that you're giving to people who back your campaign. So for the example I brought is, one reward tier was a set of my chocolate bar, and another reward was a t-shirt centered around Luji's chocolate. So what you really want to do is actually incentivize people to purchase on day one. And I'll talk through more about why we want to do that when we get to the launch phase. But you want to incentivize people as much as possible to back your campaign during the first day or during the first couple of days. And you can do that by offering a discount for people on your email list, actually. So, hey, join my email list, because when we launch, you're going to get 10% off. So you want to make sure you're part of this email list, because if you're not getting this discount. And so you offer an incentive for them to want to be on your email list, and also an incentive for them to back your campaign super early, because that's the only way to secure that discount. So you want to drive some sense of urgency for these things by creating incentives like that. It can be a time limitation, but it can also be a quantity. Like you can say, we only have 20 packs of the milk chocolate, or whatever offering you have in your reward tier. So then that will incentivize someone to want to purchase quickly because you're limiting it by some facet. And then in addition to that is you want to also craft your story. So, it's part of what we've already talked about with the video and everything, but really honing in on your value proposition and why, you're launching this project so that other people will buy into it. And that's going to play into, making the launch video, which is also really important. And one note I made on there is you want to keep the video pretty short. I think what they mentioned is under 2 minutes is ideal. Mine was about just a little over 3 minutes. So I would say it shouldn't be too long because people do have a short attention span. Looking at the backend analytics, I don't think everyone finished the video actually. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And it should be engaging and really just genuine to your brand. Like I mentioned, if you have a funny brand, then really lean in on that for the video and really showcasing what you're bringing. And then another really high priority thing is that for the most part, crowdfunding really starts initially with your network of friends, partners, family, everything. It could be your neighbor, it could be your neighbor's friends, but anyone in your network, you actually want to create a list of all those people to reach out to them on launch day. But you don't want to wait till the day you launch to do that. You want to do that well in advance, so that you have a list that's ready for you to reach out to. So make sure you do that well in advance of the launch so that once it's launch day, you already know who you're going to reach out to and tell them that your campaign is live. And then just to go through some of these other medium priority things that you want to check off is I mentioned that, there's a bunch of different platforms. In most cases, Kickstarter or Indiegogo would be the safest bet, but really want to research the different platforms and look through and see which one would resonate most with your brand. So one key thing to look at is, have people launch something similar to what you're doing on these platforms? And has it been successful? If it has, that's usually a really good indicator that you also want to be there. So like I mentioned, like for instance, the one that's focused on women entrepreneurs could be really good. If you have a brand that's maybe supporting women farmers, or if it, something that's women owned, because that's what that platform would be looking for. And then you also, during the pre-launch phase, want to make a detailed budget and outline of all your costs. You need to know all the expenses that are going to be part of, your launch. This is just any other launch. It doesn't make a difference whether it's on crowdfunding or not, but it's especially important here because you want to know how you're going to price those reward tiers and ensure that you're actually profiting a substantial amount when you're giving away these things as rewards. So you want to make sure you have all your costs, especially shipping costs, because those are the things that if you don't consider, you could end up, finishing through the campaign and realize that you're not as profitable as you could have been. So you really want to think about those costs. And that will also go right in line with the funding goal. When you have your detailed costs, at minimum, one of the metrics that I would look at is at least I need to cover my costs and then an additional cushion. And I know that my reward tier, my funding goal has to be at least that amount. So this is unique for every situation, but I just wanted to share some best practice on this one. But after you get your costs in line, then you can decide what your funding goal should be. And then if you're feeling like really you've gotten all those things done and you still have some time before the launch, then you can in advance prepare like your launch announcements, all the emails that are going to go out to people, the social media posts that will be going out during the launch, so that you don't have to worry about any of that. And I did this for my launch. I got not everything, but I got some of my posts ready, my emails ready, so that during the actual campaign, I didn't have to be focused too much on that. And I could just kind of live in the moment for the campaign. And then finally on here is to prepare a PR and media outreach list. Again, this is more, I'd say this one is optional because I did not focus on this. But if you have ample time before your actual launch, you can start to make a list for PR and media that you'll reach out to actually engage with them once your campaign is live. I'm gonna check the chat if there are any questions. Okay, awesome. No questions so far, but thank you for the comments. Now that we've talked about the pre-launch phase, I'm gonna go into the launch phase. So, most of the work, like I mentioned, honestly happens pre-launch. Like that slide was a mouthful because that's where you're doing most of your work, and that's where you need to invest most of your efforts. Because if you haven't built an email list and you haven't created a compelling video and you haven't gotten your assets together, most of the work of the actual launch phase is dependent on what you put in during the pre-launch phase. So that's one call out. But one of the most important things when you launch on a crowdfunding campaign, on a crowdfunding platform, is how you do in the first couple of days. So I'm just gonna call it day one, but I don't actually know if it's day one or maybe day 1 to 3, but your first day is really, really important. And if you think about any of these platforms, like it can be Instagram or TikTok or any platform in general, LinkedIn, right? They're all driven by an algorithm that's actually deciding what content you see, what is pushed to the top of the feed and anything like that. So is Kickstarter, and so is Indiegogo and every other crowdfunding platform. And the way the algorithm of these platforms work is that they are really looking that you maximize your funding potential as much as possible on the first day or the first couple of days that you're on the platform. So that's why the pre-launch phase is really important, and it's really important to reach out to leads and your contacts on the first day, because you want to raise as much as possible on day one, because this triggers the crowdfunding algorithm that you're a project to watch. So if my goal is let's say my goal is 10,000, you should be raising maybe 15% or more of that on day one, so that you're a project to watch from the crowdfunding's algorithm. So for Luji's chocolate, that was like a really big priority, is to get as much funding as possible on day one, and become a project that is pushed onto other pages within the platform. So what'll happen is, if you get as much as possible, you can get a banner in some of these platforms. For instance, Kickstarter has a banner called Projects We Love, which Luji's chocolate did get that. And what happens is, once you get this Projects We Love banner, Kickstarter starts to push you onto other parts of the platform. For instance, they push you on the homepage. They also then send you to their email newsletter, which has, so many people who then will come and look at your campaign assets and decide if they want to back. So you really want to get as much done in the first couple of days, so that you can mobilize your community that you've built during the pre-launch phase, so that your launch is successful, since that first day is really important. But the launch phase is actually the fun part, because once you launch, you reach out to people and you let them know that you're live, you reach out to your email list, then all the hard work you've been doing for the past couple of months or weeks is essentially, coming together in this couple during the launch phase. And then, similar to the pre-launch, I created this checklist of things that you want to go through during the launch. And I've broken this down into basically 3 phases. The first day towards the first week. So that's the first week that you're live on the platform. Then anything from the first week to the final 3 days is in the middle section. And the final 3 days has a different set of things to focus on. And I'd say this is pretty extensive, but it's still not comprehensive. It's just a checklist of things you want to bear in mind during your launch period. So on day one, most of this I already shared, right? First, you you actually want to soft launch if possible to a smaller group of people to build the momentum. So that can be reaching out one-on-one to your contacts, which you already made in the pre-launch phase, reaching out and telling them, hey, like we're live. We're allowing early access to a small group of people, and you get to access the campaign early. And that's going to build momentum and drive more attention to your campaign. And one perspective that was shared with me that I think could be helpful here is like, people like to support a campaign or a product or really anything that seems like it's winning, you know, already. And that's why driving as much traffic as you can during the beginning of your project is really good, because it's going to incentivize more people that you're a project that they should also back, since other people have done that. So you want to soft launch to a small group of people to build momentum. And then you're going to make a launch announcement. That's to your email. You're going to update your website to point back to the platform. You're going to post it on social media. You're going to basically put it everywhere as much as possible. Like, you're going to tell people that you meet about it on day one. You're going to tell your neighbors, as many people as you can share the news of this launch. Definitely want to do that, because this is like a big event that you're making it. It's a launch announcement and a launch event. So you want to try to kind of orchestrate an event online, and that you do that by sharing this news in as many places as possible. And then on the first day too, you will get these backers, since you've reached out to people one-on-one, you've created that email list, and you want to make sure you send campaign updates to people. Or not to people, but you want to send a campaign update during your first day that you're live to say thank you for backing this campaign. And the messaging that you already crafted during your pre-launch phase, you want to lean into it a lot more during the launch phase, right? Like, what's the key thing people care about with your brand? If it's that you have health benefits or you're supporting women farmers, then lean into it on day one and like showcase how they're backing your project is doing that. If it's that they are supporting a family-owned business in some way, then you want to lean into it there too, so that it's really clear. And then people will be asking some questions, whether in DMs or right in the comments. So I just want to be responsive so that, you know, and really engaged during that beginning half of the launch, and also start to create content around the questions or the milestones that you're hitting. And you can post that to social media as well. And I already talked through the importance of one-on-one outreach, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but keep that in mind, that one-on-one outreach does work, and you want to reach out to people and let them know that you're live on the crowdfunding platform, like Kickstarter. And then, you know, after the first week, you know, hopefully you would have raised a bunch of the funds that you're looking to raise of your goal. And then you want to continue to share updates, and you want to celebrate the milestones. So that's something for you yourself, but also publicly, like by posting updates and saying, you know, we're 20% funded, we're 50% funded, and really make it something exciting that that you're doing with your project. And you also want to, if possible, during the campaign, because it does get stale in the middle half of the campaign, you want to do something to continue the event. That could be like a live product demo. It can be an event maybe, or some type of video where you're sharing, you know, insights that you're learning from the campaign. Luji's Chocolate, we had a launch event, but I think there's a variety of different things that you can do that can be part of just showcasing more about the story that you're going through. And then this is a note I just wanted to make, that during this period, you should probably expect a plateau, in that, you know, people really get excited when you launch. And when you're about to close out the campaign, they're like, oh, it's almost over, so they want to back. But in the middle there, you will get some backing, but you should expect that there will be a plateau in the middle, because it kind of goes up, down, and back up. So you should expect that. Don't fret, and just know that that's kind of part of it. And then if you created that PR and media list, you know, during your pre-launch phase, this is when you want to start reaching out to them and letting them know these updates and the milestones that you're reaching. so that people can hopefully start putting that publicity behind it, which would also drive more traffic. And then during the final 3 days or the last couple of days of your launch, this is like the final push. This is when you want to, again, make it a super big deal, because people do want to back at the last couple of days. I don't know why people wait, but they will wait, a lot of people. So you want to, for one, reach out to contacts, because you'll be able to see who's pledged. You want to reach out to some of your contacts who haven't pledged, if you're comfortable with that, and just check in and remind them that your campaign is closing soon, and you wanted to let them know. You also want to continue to reach out to your email list, right? These are people who signed up to be notified about the launch. So you want to let them know, hey, if you haven't yet ordered, if you haven't yet, backed our campaign, we're going to be closing out soon and you'll lose that opportunity. So make sure you go back the campaign as soon as possible. And you want to tell them that. And you also want to continue to make regular updates, even more in these last 3 days, because like I mentioned, this is the final push where people who didn't do it in the couple days of the campaign will be able to do that in the final 3 days. And as I'm talking, I just realized I didn't mention the duration of these campaigns. They're usually 30 to 60 days. You get to set the duration. So it's usually somewhere between like a month to 2 months. And then before I talk about kind of some lessons learned from Luji's chocolate, I just wanted to share some tips and some call outs. Some of this is just like to make sure it was clear, but I think we talked about the launch video already. If you can have any like reviews or testimonials, since most of these people haven't actually seen your product physically, it would be really good to include that. And then when you are launching a crowdfunding campaign, for instance, on Kickstarter, you have to submit the campaign to Kickstarter before it can actually go live. You won't be able to tell when you're doing this that if you submit it, you can edit it, but you can. So you actually want to submit that project super early so that you can just update it in the background as you get it. Because if you wait till last minute, it does take a couple of days. So you want to plan well in advance of your launch for that. And then I think once it's live, as I mentioned, you can continue to actually change the campaign body. Can't change the funding goal or any reward tiers that have been selected. But other than that, you can change almost everything. And then you want to just continue to stay in touch and stay engaged with your backers. I noticed that was something really key for Luji's chocolate, because people would want to know about the delivery timeline and check in on updates. So you just want to be proactive in sharing that. So those are some just some call outs that I wanted to share. And to talk about some lessons learned from Luji's chocolate, we launched last October, as I mentioned, and we raised a little over 21K. And if I was to think through, what else could we have done, or what are some lessons learned, giving regular updates, especially post-launch, since once the campaign is done, now it's actually time for you to deliver in on what you've sold them on. So you want to make sure people are really aware of the timeline. You would have shared that on your campaign page, but people will always have questions. So want to be proactive in doing that. And then for fulfillment, there are different tools you can use. They're called campaign managers. It's not, I think it's a little too detailed to go in for this call, but the important thing to note is that you can actually do upsells with these tools. So that means after the campaign is over, when it's time to fulfill your orders, you can leverage a campaign manager to do more, to get more sales after the campaign is done. And then we spoke about the cost, but one big lesson that I learned is to take a lot of time to iron out the costs, especially the shipping, because that's something, especially if you're allowing international shipping from different countries, you really want to make sure you hone down those costs because that can really drive how profitable you can be and how much you're going to make once you actually, you know, give everyone their rewards and everything like that. So that's something really key to pay attention to. And I just wanted to leave you all with one quote as I close out. And it says, "Until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter." And, you know, I got an opportunity to share the story of Luji's chocolate on Kickstarter. And I would encourage all of you to, you know, if you have that interest and you're interested in it, I definitely think it was a great way to tell Luji's chocolate story and the story of, you know, creating a made in West Africa brand. So whatever story you have, whatever it's about, it's definitely important for you to, I would say, to share that. And I think Kickstarter was a great way for me to get started on it. And so that's why I wanted to share that. That's all I had for content, and I will open it up to Q&A if there are any after I've shared a lot about crowdfunding.